I never thought my life would spiral into something straight out of a twisted revenge thriller. 5 years together, a perfect engagement and a wedding just months away, until I uncovered the truth, lies, betrayal, and secrets that destroyed everything I believed in. But this isn't just a story about heartbreak. It's about what happens when trust is shattered and there's nothing left to lose. You won't believe your ears when you hear what happened at the end of the story. My name's Jake. 6 months before my wedding, I found out my fiancée, Emily, was cheating on me. We'd been together for 5 years, and I thought she was the love of my life. We met in college, me studying business, her chasing a degree in communications. She was sharp, beautiful, and had this infectious laugh that drew everyone in. We got engaged on a foggy night at the pier where we had our first date. She cried, said yes through happy tears, and hugged me like I was the only man in the world. For a long time, I believed I was. Planning the wedding was supposed to be the most exciting time of our lives. Our families got along great, our friends were excited, and everything seemed perfect until the cracks started showing. It began with the little things. She'd laugh at messages on her phone, quickly turning the screen away when I got near. "Just work stuff," she'd say, brushing me off with a kiss. She was always working late or meeting up with her best friend, Jason. Jason had been in the picture for a couple of years, some guy she met at a marketing conference. I never liked how close they were, but she dismissed my concerns. "He's like a brother," she'd say, rolling her eyes. I bought it. Love makes you trust blindly, until it doesn't. The night I realized something was seriously wrong. She came home hours late from a work meeting. She smelled of cologne, not mine, and her lipstick was smudged. When I asked what happened, she fed me some story about spilling wine on herself at a team dinner. I wanted to believe her, but doubt sank its claws into me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. I needed proof. Something real, undeniable. The doubts kept eating away at me. I hated feeling like some paranoid fool, but I couldn't ignore the nagging voice in the back of my mind. Emily was acting stranger by the day, distant when we were alone, extra sweet when she needed something. It was like she was compensating for something. One Friday evening, she mentioned Jason was coming over to help her plan the wedding slideshow. My gut twisted. Who the hell needs a slideshow planning session until midnight? But I nodded like the trusting fiancé I used to be. When Jason arrived, I kept my cool. They sat together on the couch, laptops open, chatting and laughing like it was just another night. I excused myself, saying I needed to prep for an early meeting, and went to our bedroom. In reality, I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling while their muffled voices carried through the walls. Something about the way she giggled made my skin crawl. That wasn't her usual laugh. It was that flirty, breathless one she used when we first started dating. The next day, I bought a set of hidden cameras. The decision made me sick. I didn't want to be that guy, but I needed to know the truth. I installed them carefully, one behind a photo frame in the living room, another in the kitchen, and one near the front door. If they were doing something, I'd catch it. A week passed, each day stretching longer than the last. Emily seemed normal, too normal. Then, one night, she claimed she was working late again. This time, I stayed home, glued to my phone as the live feed from the hidden cameras played. Around 9:15 p.m., the front door opened. Jason walked in like he owned the place. No knocking, no announcement, just strolled in, kicking off his shoes. I clenched my fists, heart pounding as I watched them embrace, longer than friends should. She ran her hands down his chest like she used to with me, her eyes gleaming with something I hadn't seen in months. They kissed, passionate, familiar. I felt like the air had been punched from my lungs. My whole body went cold. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was exactly what I feared. I watched, frozen, as they moved from the living room to the couch, laughing, whispering secrets meant only for me. My mind raced with betrayal and rage, but also with something else, calculation. They thought they'd gotten away with it. They thought I was clueless. They were wrong. The next day, I made up an excuse to leave work early and headed to the electronics store. I bought 2 small, discreet security cameras and spent that evening installing them around the apartment while Emily was out, working late. One went in the living room where she usually hung out after coming home, and the other in our bedroom. It felt disgusting, sneaky, but I had to know. I couldn't live with the uncertainty gnawing at me like a festering wound. For the next 2 weeks, I tried to act normal. I went through the wedding plans with her, attended tastings, even smiled through engagement photos. But every night, I reviewed the footage. At first, there was nothing. Just her coming home late, dropping her bag on the couch, and scrolling on her phone until she fell asleep. I almost started believing I was paranoid, that maybe my mind was inventing scenarios out of insecurity. But then came Friday night. She told me she was meeting Jason for drinks, after work. My stomach twisted, but I forced a smile. "Have fun," I said, pretending not to care. That night, around 11 p.m., I watched the live feed from the living room camera. The apartment was dark and quiet, until the front door creaked open. Emily stumbled in, laughing, with Jason right behind her. They were all over each other before the door even closed. His hands gripped her waist as she pulled him in for a kiss, whispering something that made him smirk. They collapsed onto the couch, tangled in each other like I'd never seen her with me. Not for a long time. I froze, watching in stunned silence as my worst nightmare unfolded right there on my screen. My stomach churned, my chest tight with rage and disbelief. This was the woman I was supposed to marry. The woman I was building a life with. Every memory we'd made, every promise exchanged, it all felt like a cruel joke. I shut the laptop, breathing heavily. My hands trembled with anger, my mind spinning through 100 violent impulses I couldn't act on. I wanted to kick the door down, scream at her, throw Jason out like the trash he was, but I didn't. I needed a plan. Something better. Something permanent. This wasn't going to end with a fight that would leave her relieved to see me walk away. No, she was going to regret every lie, every betrayal. She thought she was clever, thought she'd get away with it, but she forgot one thing. I was watching. After that night, everything changed, but not for Emily. She kept playing the doting fiancé, still texting Jason under the table and coming home, late from work. I played along, giving her the same fake smiles she gave me. But inside, I was seething. I spent hours combing through the footage, documenting every stolen kiss, every whispered laugh, every betrayal. I wasn't just collecting evidence, I was building a weapon. The next weekend, she announced she was going on a girls' trip to the lake. I knew exactly what that meant. Jason was tagging along. I kissed her goodbye at the door, wishing her a fun weekend, and watched her car disappear down the street. The second she was gone, I sprang into action. First stop, the lawyer's office. I met with the best divorce attorney in town, Robert Hargrove, a shark in a suit with a reputation for shredding cheaters in court. I laid out everything, the upcoming wedding, the hidden cameras, the recorded evidence. He nodded thoughtfully, already seeing the angles I hadn't. "You're in a strong position," he said. "But if you really want to ruin her, I have some ideas." We drew up the divorce papers, filing them secretly under a sealed court order. The wedding date was still 6 months away, but I wouldn't need that long. Next, I called a tech-savvy friend, Kyle. He owed me big time from college, and I needed something special. Something that would burn Emily's carefully curated image to ash. "I want a custom video made," I told him. "It needs to look professional." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. "Send me the footage." Over the next few weeks, I acted like nothing had changed. I bought her flowers, complimented her dress, even helped her finalize the wedding guest list, knowing exactly who would be watching when her world fell apart. Meanwhile, Kyle worked his magic, editing the damning clips into a highlight reel that would make Hollywood jealous. No nudity, just enough to make it obvious. He added dramatic music, captions, and even a slow-motion replay of her slipping into Jason's arms. When I watched the finished product, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. It was perfect, and on the day of our wedding, every single guest was going to see it. The days leading up to the wedding felt surreal. Emily was glowing with excitement, sending out invitations, finalizing floral arrangements, and talking endlessly about our perfect future. She had no idea she was planning her own destruction. I played the loving groom-to-be, indulging her every whim. Each time she gushed about how happy she was, I smiled, thinking about what was coming. The weight of betrayal simmered just beneath the surface, but I kept my mask in place. Meanwhile, my revenge plan was coming together. I booked the reception at a luxury country club with a massive ballroom, complete with a high-end projector and 20-foot screen. The manager, Mr. Collier, was thrilled to accommodate our wedding slideshow. Kyle and I tested the video setup during one of Emily's work dinners. Watching her face pop up on the enormous screen, laughing with Jason, made my hands tighten into fists, but I forced myself to stay calm. Not yet. The guest list included everyone: family, friends, co-workers, even Jason, whom Emily insisted on inviting because he's such a close friend. She assured me Jason would bring a date to keep things from being awkward. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Jason wouldn't be bringing anyone. He'd be leaving alone. I woke up early, feeling sharper than I had in months. Today was the day everything came crashing down. Emily was staying with her bridesmaids, texting me sweet messages about how excited she was. "Love you so much, baby. Can't wait to be Mrs. Anderson." Face blowing a kiss. I almost felt pity for her. Almost. After a quick breakfast, I met Kyle outside the venue. He handed me a small remote. Its only button labeled play. "Just hit this when you're ready," he said. "You sure about this?" Absolutely. The wedding itself was picture perfect. Emily looked breathtaking in her white gown, smiling so wide it almost seemed real. My heart twisted, not with love, but with hate for what she'd done to us. We exchanged vows, and she cried as she promised to love and honor me forever. I stared into her teary eyes, knowing those words meant nothing. "Till death do us part," she whispered, slipping the ring onto my finger. "Till death," I echoed, barely suppressing a bitter smile. The guests cheered as we shared a long, staged kiss, one last act before the grand finale. The ballroom sparkled with lights, filled with laughter and clinking glasses. Emily mingled, basking in the glow of her perfect wedding, completely unaware of the storm brewing. When the cake was served, I tapped my glass with a spoon, calling for everyone's attention. "Friends, family, thank you for being here on this special day," I said, my voice steady. Emily beamed, holding my hand. "I put together something meaningful to show how much this marriage means to me," I continued. "Emily, this is for you." She gasped, covering her mouth in joy. "Oh my God, Jake. You didn't." I clicked the remote. The lights dimmed, and the projector flickered to life. Soft, romantic music played, a typical wedding slideshow opening. Then came the footage. Jason's face filled the screen, his arms wrapped tightly around Emily. Their laughter echoed through the silent room as captions appeared. "Emily's real love story." Gasps erupted from the crowd. Emily froze, her smile fading into pale horror. "No, no," she whispered, backing away. I stayed rooted in place, letting the video play. Every kiss, every touch, every deceit, laid bare for the world to see. The room was a whirlwind of shocked murmurs and outraged whispers. Jason bolted for the exit, chased by a furious cousin of mine. Emily collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Jake, please. I can explain." I walked over slowly, reached into my jacket, and pulled out the divorce papers. "This is the only explanation I need," I said, dropping them at her feet. The ballroom erupted, some guests shouting, others filming the spectacle on their phones. Emily sobbed, crumpling into a broken heap as everything she'd built unraveled in seconds. I turned and walked out, leaving behind the wreckage of her lies. Justice served. The heavy oak doors of the ballroom closed behind me, muffling the chaos inside. I took a deep breath, savoring the cold night air. For the first time in months, my chest felt light, like I could finally breathe again. The distant sound of shouting and breaking glass echoed faintly from the reception hall. Emily's perfect life was disintegrating, just as she had shattered mine. It felt right. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Kyle. "Dude, epic. Jason got tackled by your cousin Nate. Security's dragging them both out." I chuckled darkly. Nate had always been protective and way too eager for a fight. Jason wouldn't forget this night anytime soon. I headed toward the parking lot, walking slowly, letting the cool breeze calm the adrenaline still coursing through me. My car was parked near the venue's exit, strategically chosen for a quick getaway. As I unlocked the door, another message lit up my phone. You need to come back. Emily's parents are asking for you. I hesitated. Emily's parents, Tom and Linda, were good people, kind, supportive, the perfect in-laws, until tonight. They hadn't deserved this, but collateral damage was unavoidable. Against my better judgment, I turned around. Part of me needed to see their faces, needed them to understand what their daughter had done. By the time I returned, security had restored some order, though the guests were still buzzing with stunned disbelief. People avoided looking at me, their expressions ranging from pity to barely concealed judgment. Near the dessert table, I spotted Emily, her wedding dress stained with tears and makeup, sitting slumped in a chair. Her maid of honor, Chelsea, hovered nearby, whispering frantic reassurances that clearly weren't working. Then I saw them, Tom and Linda, standing near the entrance, looking older and more broken than I'd ever seen. "Jake," Tom called, his voice steady but weary. "A word?" I walked over, bracing myself. "Why?" Linda whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Why would you do that? In front of everyone?" Her voice cracked, and I felt a brief pang of guilt, but only for them. "I'm sorry," I said honestly, but she left me no choice. Tom clenched his jaw, trying to hold it together. "You could have handled this privately, spared us, spared her." "No," I interrupted, my tone sharper than intended. "She didn't spare me." I reached into my pocket, pulling out a USB drive. "This has everything, the full footage, time-stamped, dates included. If you still think she deserved better, watch it." Linda flinched, clutching Tom's arm. He stared at the drive, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "You loved her once," he said quietly. "I did," I admitted, my voice colder than I'd intended. "But she killed that love the first time she let Jason through our front door." Tom took the USB reluctantly, his eyes filled with something between disappointment and reluctant understanding. "You're a hard man, Jake." "Not hard enough," I replied, turning to leave. The ride back felt surreal, as if I were watching someone else's life unfold. My phone buzzed endlessly with texts and missed calls, some from old friends, others from numbers I didn't recognize. Gossip spreads fast. One text stood out, from Kyle. "Emily left with her parents. Jason was hauled off by the cops after swinging at Nate. Call me later." I smiled faintly. Jason finally reaping what he'd sown was the cherry on top of a perfectly executed plan. When I finally pulled into my driveway, exhaustion hit me like a freight train. The house felt colder, emptier than usual, but at least it was mine now. I sat on the couch in the dark, staring at nothing. The adrenaline that had kept me going for weeks had burned out, leaving only a strange, hollow ache. I'd won. I'd crushed Emily's lies, exposed her for what she was, but the satisfaction I'd expected wasn't there, because in the end, even after all she'd done, I'd still lost. The next morning, I woke up groggy and disoriented, still fully dressed on the couch. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, mocking the darkness I felt inside. The events of the previous night hit me like a sledgehammer. The wedding, the video, the look on Emily's face. I checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls and texts flooded the screen. Concerned messages from friends, furious voicemails from Emily's bridesmaids, even a few gleeful, "well done" texts from old college buddies. One voicemail stood out, from Emily herself. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. Her voice was shattered, trembling with desperation. "Jake, please call me back. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to happen. Jason meant nothing. Please, we can fix this. We can still." I deleted the message before she could finish. Whatever excuses she had were meaningless now. I spent the morning tying up loose ends, calling the venue to settle the bill, since I'd already paid in advance, and forwarding divorce documents to Robert, my lawyer. Around noon, my doorbell rang. I expected delivery or maybe some nosy neighbor fishing for gossip, but it was Emily's father, Tom. He stood stiffly on the porch, a man visibly aged overnight. He held the USB drive I'd given him the night before. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice strained. I nodded reluctantly, stepping aside to let him in. We sat in tense silence at the kitchen table, the drive resting between us like a live grenade. "I watched it," he said finally. "All of it." I waited, unsure where this was going. "You were right," he admitted quietly. There's no excuse for what she did." His voice broke slightly. "I'm ashamed of her, of myself for raising someone capable of that." His words hit harder than I expected. Despite everything, I never wanted to break them. I wanted Emily to feel the sting of betrayal, not her parents. "I didn't do it to hurt you or Linda," I said honestly. "But she needed to be exposed." Tom nodded slowly. "I understand. But you've crushed her, Jake." "Good." The word left my mouth before I could stop it. "She crushed me first." He sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "She's staying with us for now. You won't hear from her again, unless it's through lawyers." I nodded. "That's all I want." Tom rose, his expression weary but resolute. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened. You deserved better." Without waiting for a reply, he walked out, leaving me alone with nothing but the sound of the door clicking shut. By evening, the fallout had gone viral. Social media exploded with leaked clips from the wedding, courtesy of some well-meaning guests. The hashtags #WeddingRevenge and #CheaterExposed were trending. A few former mutual friends reached out, offering sympathy mixed with guilty curiosity. "We had no idea she was like that," they claimed. I ignored them all. I found myself scrolling through the wedding video someone had uploaded online, edited for maximum drama, of course. The public humiliation Emily suffered was now entertainment for millions of strangers. For a second, I felt something, pity, maybe? But then I remembered every lie, every whispered phone call, every time she came home smelling like someone else's cologne. She chose this. As the sun set, I poured myself a drink and sat by the window, staring into the dark. Revenge had been sweet, but its aftertaste was bitter. The following weeks felt like living in a surreal dream. Everywhere I went, people stared, some with pity, others with barely concealed smirks. The video from the wedding had gone viral, sparking endless online debates. Was I a hero for exposing a cheater or a villain for humiliating her so publicly? I didn't care what strangers thought. The only thing that mattered was that Emily was gone, for good. One morning, I got a call from my boss, Greg. He didn't mince words. "Jake, we need to talk." I sighed. The video had reached my office. "You've always been great at your job," Greg said cautiously. "But this situation, it's bad PR. Clients are asking questions." He didn't have to spell it out. The last thing a professional consulting firm needed was a scandal linked to one of its top managers. "Are you firing me?" I asked flatly. "We're offering a leave of absence," he hedged. "Paid for now." I clenched my jaw. "I understand." I hung up, feeling the weight of isolation creeping in. The video had cost me more than I'd anticipated. That afternoon, a text from an unknown number lit up my phone. "Hey, it's Chelsea. We need to talk." I hesitated. Chelsea was Emily's best friend, one of the bridesmaids who had looked ready to murder me at the wedding. Still, curiosity got the better of me. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. She arrived wearing dark sunglasses, clearly not wanting to be recognized. "Thanks for coming," she said awkwardly. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice colder than intended. She sighed, removing her sunglasses. Her eyes were red and tired. "I'm not here to attack you. I just thought you should know. Emily's in bad shape." I laughed bitterly. "Good." Chelsea flinched but pressed on. "She's broken. Staying with her parents. Jason dumped her after the video blew up." I shrugged. "Not my problem." "She's losing her job too," she added. "Her company's reviewing her moral conduct." I didn't respond. Emily had built her career on her polished, professional image, and now it was crumbling just like our engagement. Chelsea hesitated before continuing. "Look, I hated what you did, but after seeing the footage, I can't defend her." Her voice trembled. "She lied to all of us, Made us believe you were some controlling jerk while Chelsea's eyes glistened with tears. For the first time, I realized she wasn't just Emily's best friend. She was someone who'd been betrayed too. I'm sorry, she whispered. For everything. For a moment, my walls cracked. Me too, I admitted. After Chelsea left, I sat alone, staring at the untouched coffee in front of me. For the first time, I wondered if revenge had been enough, or if it had cost more than it was worth. Later that night, my lawyer Robert called. Jake, we have an update, he said. Emily signed the divorce papers. No contest. I hung up without replying. It was over, officially. Or so I thought. Because 2 nights later, as I returned home after a late drive, I found something unexpected on my porch, a single envelope taped to my front door. Inside was a handwritten note. You think this is over? You ruined my life. Now I'm going to ruin yours. My blood ran cold. I stood frozen on my porch, staring at the handwritten note in my trembling hands. Emily's words burned into my mind. You think this is over? You ruined my life. Now I'm going to ruin yours. The darkness around me seemed to thicken, pressing in from all sides. My first instinct was to scan the street, but it was empty, just the eerie quiet of a late autumn night. I took a steadying breath, crumpled the note, and headed inside, locking every door and window behind me. My heart pounded like a war drum, adrenaline surging through my veins. Was she really capable of doing something worse? Sleep had been impossible. Every creak, every rustling branch outside felt like a threat. By dawn, I was running on fumes and paranoia. After a strong cup of coffee, I called my lawyer Robert. I got a note, I explained, my voice hoarse. A threat. From Emily. He cursed under his breath. Did you call the police? No, I admitted. It felt personal. You need to file a report, he urged. Even if it's just to establish a record. I hesitated. Emily was many things. Manipulative, deceitful. But this level of aggression seemed out of character. She'd always been a schemer, not a fighter. Jake, listen to me, Robert pressed. You humiliated her in front of everyone she knows. She has nothing left to lose. That thought settled like a stone in my gut. By noon, I was sitting in a small, sterile police station, explaining everything to Officer Delgado, a sharp-eyed woman who listened carefully, jotting notes with a practiced ease. This sounds serious, she said after I finished. We'll open a file, but unless she makes direct contact again, there's not much we can do. I understand, I replied, feeling exposed. Keep your phone on, Delgado advised. And if anything feels off, call us immediately. I left the station feeling more uneasy than reassured. 2 days passed without incident, until my phone buzzed with a blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. A familiar voice oozed through the speaker. Miss me, Jake? It was Jason. My grip on the phone tightened. What the hell do you want? Relax, he drawled. I'm not here to fight. I just thought you'd want to know. Emily's been busy. His tone was smug, tinged with malice. What are you talking about? I demanded. She's not after you. Not directly, anyway. His chuckle sent a shiver down my spine. You hurt her, so she's going after everyone who helped you. My stomach turned. What the hell does that mean? Jason sighed theatrically. Let's just say, your buddy Kyle should check his email. Before I could respond, the line went dead. Panicked, I called Kyle. He answered on the 3rd ring, sounding groggy. Jake? What's up, man? Check your email now. There was a long pause, followed by a sharp intake of breath. Oh my God. What? What did she do? Kyle's voice trembled. She leaked everything, my name, my business, even my home address. It's all over social media. My mind reeled. Emily had gone scorched earth, dragging Kyle, an innocent bystander, into her twisted revenge. We'll fix this, I promised, already thinking of damage control. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Emily wasn't playing games anymore. She was coming for everyone. Kyle's voice trembled through the phone. Jake, she posted everything. My business site's down, hacked. My social media account's gone. Panic surged through me. I'm coming over. I grabbed my keys and sped across town, mind racing. Emily had always been cunning. But this was calculated destruction. When I arrived, Kyle's apartment was dark except for the glow of his shattered computer screen. He sat hunched over the desk, fingers tangled in his hair. "They're sending threats," he muttered, pointing to his phone. "Emails, DMs, even fake customer reviews." I skimmed the messages, dozens of vile insults, accusations, and even death threats. All because he'd helped me expose Emily. We spent hours restoring his accounts and securing his systems. Kyle was a tech wizard, but even he struggled against the relentless wave of online harassment. "This isn't just trolls," he said grimly. "Someone's organizing this." "Emily," I hissed. Suddenly, Kyle froze. "Jake, look at this." He opened an anonymous post on a gossip forum, an entire thread dedicated to me. "Cheating wife exposed at wedding. The perfect groom's dark secret." My stomach twisted as I read the fabricated story Emily had spun. I was a controlling, abusive fiancé. I'd trapped her in the relationship. Kyle was portrayed as a stalker who hacked her personal files. The lies were expertly crafted, blending just enough truth to seem plausible. "She's rewriting history," Kyle whispered. I clenched my fists. Not for long. The next morning, I stormed into Robert's office. He was already reviewing printed screenshots of the posts and emails I'd forwarded. "This is defamation. Severe defamation," he said, rubbing his temples. "We can file a civil suit, but it'll take time." "We don't have time," I snapped. "She's torching everything." He leaned back, thinking. "We need leverage, real leverage. Something that puts her in a legal stranglehold." I thought of the videos, the raw, unedited footage from the hidden cameras. We hadn't used most of it at the wedding, keeping things relatively tasteful. But now, would the full recordings work? I asked. Robert nodded slowly. If they prove malicious intent, yes. That evening, I made the hardest call of my life. Against every instinct, I dialed Emily's number. To my surprise, she answered on the second ring. Her voice was cold, sharp, a far cry from the desperate woman I'd left crying in that wedding ballroom. "What do you want?" she spat. "I know what you're doing," I said, forcing my voice steady. "This stops now." She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You think you can threaten me? After what you did?" "I'm not threatening you," I replied, deadly calm. "I'm warning you. Go to hell, Jake." Before she could hang up, I delivered the final blow. I still have the rest of the videos. There was silence on the other end. I could almost hear her calculating, scrambling for a response. "You wouldn't. Try me." I hung up, adrenaline roaring through my veins. For the first time, I felt like I'd seized back some control. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Emily wasn't the type to back down. She'd just escalate. Emily's stunned silence haunted me long after I hung up. The realization that I still had power over her might have felt like a victory, if I didn't know exactly how dangerous she could be when cornered. The next morning, my phone lit up with text from Kyle. "Jake, check your email. Now." Heart pounding, I opened my inbox. There it was, an anonymous message with a subject line that made my stomach drop. "Your turn." The email contained photos, dozens of them, of me, taken over the past week. Grocery store trips, walks in the park, even shots of me sitting in my living room through the window. Someone had been watching me. Attached was a single sentence. "You're not as untouchable as you think." This time, I didn't hesitate. I called Officer Delgado and forwarded the photos immediately. "Stalking, harassment, and defamation. She's escalating fast," Delgado said grimly. "You're officially under threat." "What do I do?" I asked. "For now, stay vigilant. Install more security cameras, keep your phone on you at all times, and don't engage with her." I almost laughed bitterly. "You think she'll back off?" Delgado's voice turned steely. "People like her, they don't stop until they feel they've won, or they've been stopped." Later that day, I heard a knock at my door. Expecting more police follow-up, I opened it, only to freeze. It was Tom, Emily's father. His face was pale, lined with exhaustion. He clutched a thick envelope in one trembling hand. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. Reluctantly, I stepped aside. We sat in tense silence until he finally spoke. "Emily's lost. She's obsessed with revenge. We've tried talking sense into her, but," he trailed off, shaking his head. He slid the envelope across the table. "You need to see this." I opened it with shaky fingers. Inside were printouts, bank statements, receipts, hotel reservations, Emily's entire web of destruction. "She's paying people," Tom continued, his voice hoarse. "Hackers, private investigators, even people I'm scared to name." I struggled to breathe as the gravity of the situation hit me. Emily wasn't just angry, she'd weaponized her rage. "We didn't know who else to turn to," Tom whispered. "She's spiraling." Tom's information was a goldmine, but also a ticking time bomb. I forwarded everything to Robert, who promised to file for a restraining order, an injunction, and even potential criminal charges. But deep down, I knew Emily wouldn't care. She'd already gone too far. Around 2 a.m., I woke abruptly, heart pounding. Something felt off. I crept through the darkened house, my senses on high alert. As I reached the living room, I noticed the front door, slightly ajar. My blood ran cold. Before I could react, a faint rustling came from the kitchen. Slowly, I reached for the fireplace poker resting near the hearth and edged toward the sound. Suddenly, a shadow moved, fast. I barely dodged as something crashed against the wall where my head had just been. A bat. In the dim light, I saw the intruder, a wiry man, face partially obscured by a hoodie. Not Emily. "Wrong house," I growled, raising the poker. He hesitated, calculating whether to fight or flee. The sound of distant sirens, my security alarm, made the decision for him. He bolted out the back door, disappearing into the night. The police arrived minutes later, securing the area and taking my statement. Delgado's expression was grim as she surveyed the damage. "This wasn't random," she said quietly. "He wasn't here to steal." I nodded. "He was here, for me." And deep down, I knew who'd sent him. Emily had made her next move, and it wouldn't be her last. The break-in changed everything. What started as a toxic revenge campaign had now crossed into dangerous territory. Emily was playing a new game. Officer Delgado stayed after her team cleared the house, explaining the next steps. "This wasn't a burglary," she said. "Whoever he was after you." I nodded numbly. "You think she hired him?" Delgado frowned. "It fits her pattern. The guy didn't leave prints, but this wasn't his first rodeo." My stomach churned. Emily had always been manipulative, but hiring someone? This felt different. "We'll increase patrols near your house," she continued. "In the meantime, be ready." The next morning, Robert called. "Jake, I'm filing for a court-ordered protection order, but Emily's playing dirty." "How bad is it?" I asked. "She's already bled your social media, hit Kyle's accounts, and now she's coming after your finances." I cursed under my breath. Robert paused before adding, "We need leverage. Real leverage." My mind raced through the files Emily's father, Tom, had given me. The receipts. The payments. They weren't just random expenses. They were breadcrumbs. "I think I know how to stop her," I said. I spent the next 2 days working in secret. No calls. No texts. I contacted a cybersecurity consultant Kyle recommended, someone who could track the payments Emily had made through anonymous accounts. By day 3, we had something, a burner phone. Its number linked directly to payments made from an offshore account. Emily's account. "This is her command center," Kyle explained grimly. "Whoever she's paying, she's using this phone." It was my lifeline, and my next move. That night, I sent Emily a single text from a spoofed number. "I know everything. I'm coming." Her response came almost instantly. "You have no idea what you're playing with." But she was wrong. I knew exactly what I was playing with. I wasn't just setting a trap. I was baiting the predator. The following night, I staged a scene, leaving my house dark, car parked out front like I was home. I waited in Kyle's van down the street, watching the house through live camera feeds. Hours passed, nothing. Then, just past midnight, The side gate creaked. A dark figure slipped through the backyard, moving with quiet precision. "Gotcha," Cal whispered. The intruder approached the back door, picking the lock with practiced ease. I held my breath. Suddenly, my phone buzzed, a call from the burner phone. "Pick it up," Cal urged. I answered, voice steady. "Emily." The figure froze, slowly looking up at one of the hidden cameras. She knew. "You think you've won?" Emily hissed through the phone. "This isn't over." "It is for you," I replied coldly. "Look behind you." Bright red and blue lights flashed through the yard as police swarmed in, guns drawn. The intruder didn't resist. He'd been caught red-handed. The line went dead. The next morning, Emily was arrested on multiple charges: conspiracy, harassment, defamation, and solicitation to commit assault. Robert called with updates. "She's looking at serious time, Jake, years." For the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. It was over. Truly over. Or so I thought. Because 2 weeks later, I received another envelope. Inside was a single, chilling note. "I may be behind bars, but this isn't over." Emily's war wasn't over. It was just changing battlegrounds. The note haunted me. "This isn't over." Emily might have been behind bars, but her reach extended far beyond those prison walls. Robert assured me the evidence against her was airtight. Multiple counts of harassment, conspiracy, and even attempted solicitation of violence. But something in my gut told me it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next few weeks passed uneventfully, though I never stopped looking over my shoulder. Emily's trial date was set, and the prosecution had more than enough to bury her. But as the weeks stretched into months, strange things kept happening. A locked account withdrew $5,000 from my savings before the bank flagged it. Kyle's business site was hacked again, this time beyond repair. Worst of all, Tom and Linda disappeared. Emily's parents vanished one night after going on vacation. No credit card activity, no calls, just gone. "Maybe they just needed to get away," Robert offered, though even he sounded unconvinced. But I knew better. Emily was still pulling strings. The day of Emily's sentencing arrived. She pled guilty to several charges in exchange for a reduced sentence, 6 years in a maximum security prison. I attended the hearing, sitting in the back of the courtroom. She spotted me immediately, flashing a twisted, knowing smile as the judge read her sentence. 6 years. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. Not yet. As the guards led her away in handcuffs, Emily mouthed 2 chilling words. "You lose." It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. I was drinking coffee, watching the news when the anchor broke in with a chilling report. Inmates escaped from a federal transport van, 2 still at large. My stomach dropped as Emily Dawes' face flashed across the screen. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of glass shattering downstairs. She'd come back. I reached for the gun I'd started keeping in my nightstand, heart pounding. Every nerve in my body screamed that this was the end. One last confrontation. Footsteps crept up the stairs. Slow, deliberate. I waited in the dark, every muscle tense, until the bedroom door slowly creaked open. "Jake!" Emily's voice cooed from the shadows. "Miss me?" Before she could react, I stepped from the corner, gun raised. "Don't move." She froze, but the twisted smile returned. "You won't shoot me," she whispered. "You still love me even now?" My finger tightened on the trigger, but she lunged fast, knocking the gun aside. We grappled, crashing into furniture, fueled by months of rage and desperation. Finally, I pinned her, gasping for breath. It was over. "Stay down," I shouted, pressing her to the floor as sirens blared outside. They were coming. Emily stopped struggling, laughing weakly through bloody lips. "You'll never be free of me." Emily was taken into custody, sentenced to 25 years without parole for attempted murder, escape, and a slew of other charges. Kyle rebuilt his business. Robert became a local hero for winning one of the most publicized cases in years. And me? I sold the house, changed my name, and moved far away. But even now, some nights, when the wind howls through the trees, I still hear her voice. Because you never truly escape the past.